And welcome to the Coltrane Conservatory of the Arts talk show. We're going to be talking a little bit about a few things here that I'd like to share with you on this evening. I would like for you to sit still, stay with us. Some of you have been with us for a while, others are just tuning in. And if you're just tuning in, we want to welcome you first of all. My name is Joe Pace III. I am the director as well as one of the instructors of the Coltrane Conservatory of the Arts. At the board with me is Mr. Lionel Don, who is one of our instructors. And we encourage you to call us here at the station if you'd like to know more about the music program that we are conducting at our facility, which is located at 6353 South Cottage Grove Avenue. That's right across the street from the Social Security office, and it is also right next to the Grand Ballroom, and to the south of us would be the Alderman's office. Now, we usually talk about a few local and national issues on this program, also in addition to talking to you about our music programs. Now, of course, this is a music school, a conservatory. Those of you who are interested in learning how to play an instrument, you can give us a call here at the station. You see the number on the screen there. Or you may call our facility, which is 773-891-1875. And I want to remind you that this is an interactive television program. That means that you can call that number right there and get on the air and say what you want to. We are loud. We are live, and and sometimes we're loud around here, but we are live, and we also stream online for those of you who would like to go online and hear this broadcast. Now, I'm going to share a few things with you I want you to be aware of, and this will give you what you need to know about some of our instruments, what we do here. If you look right there, you can see that we do the saxophone, we do the piano, we teach the drum set, we teach guitar, we teach both the electric guitar and we also teach the acoustic guitar. Those are just a few of the instruments that we teach. We teach flute, we teach baritone, we teach bass guitar. And if you really want to learn how to play an instrument, and I'm not talking about just going somewhere to spend some time, but you really want to learn how to play an instrument, you need to call us and we'll run the program down, let you know what it takes in order for you to get into these programs, okay? Now, I want you to give us a call. We have, as I told you, Lionel is on the board, and he'd be more than willing to explain some of these things to you if you call here today. If you call our facility at 773-891-1875, we would then return the call and break everything down to you and make it plain. Okay, because you're going to have to leave a message there because we're all closed down. Okay? All right. Now, we're going to fast forward and talk about a few things having to do with what's going on in our society. Okay? Well, the first thing we want to talk about is the Parkland, Florida incident. And you all are familiar with that. This happened at the Douglas High School there. 17 people were murdered by some insane individual. And now I want to send out all of my compassion and condolences to those individuals and their families. These were youngsters, some of them just 14 years old, and then of course we had 3 instructors who were murdered by this man who now is walking around with his head down as though he's sorry for what he did. But before that, he was pumped all up and ready to go out and murder other human beings. I mean, in cold-blooded murder, going from one class to the other, spraying a high-powerful, rapid-firing weapon that is actually legal in this country. Now, when you think about that, you first thing about it, you think about the fact that the Constitution was probably drafted, I want to say, around what? Right after the war ended, somewhere around the early 80s or the late 70s. That's 1700s. And so this was a long time ago. This was a long time ago. And that amendment, I'm not sure when they put the amendment in there, but it wasn't long after the whole thing was drafted that they put the amendment in there, which states Americans have a right to bear arms. But that was a long time ago, folks. And it seems to me as though they were they put that in there because really people were living like almost you might say animalistic. I mean, if somebody said something to you you didn't like, you invited them out for a duel. That's how Hamilton lost his life, and he came along much later. But that's how he lost. Not much later. That's right. That's about during that time because Hamilton was George Washington's Secretary of Treasury, I believe. And so, but people were wild and people were mean. I mean, if you said something to somebody and they didn't really like it, especially if you said it about their family, or like their mother or their father or something, you could end up in a duel for your life. And if you didn't accept that duel, you were considered a coward. You'd lose whatever status you had in life. You would lose that. I should say stature you had in life. You would lose it. So right now, it seems to me as though this whole Constitution, the way it's written, ought to be torn up and thrown away, and a new one ought to be made up that reflects modern days and a modern society, in opposed to one that was drawn up that reflected a kind of a wild, wild west society. I mean, I'm serious when I say that. Now, politicians won't dare touch this because the first thing that somebody would say, well, okay, what? You mean to tell me you're going to tear up what the founding fathers put together, as though what somebody put together 200 plus years ago is going to stand the test of time forever? And that's just not realistic that would happen in that way. In other words, everything changes. We all evolve, societies evolve, human beings, and technology and all the other things that we do. And now since we reached this point here, and back in those days, I mean, they were talking about pistols that shoot 6 rounds, not about these weapons that have been developed over the last 10, 20 years where they can spray as many as 25 or 30 bullets within seconds. And that's a lot of firepower, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm putting it out there that we really need to, I'm not sure, I guess you could take that amendment out. I guess since they put it in there, you could take it out, the Second Amendment, I believe it is. You could take it out. If it was put in, it could be taken out. But I think the whole thing needs to be torn up if you want to know the truth. That's my opinion, all right? If you have something you'd like to say about that, if somebody's sitting out there who feels as though this document, that is to say the Constitution, is immortal, so to speak, then give us a call. We'll put you on there and let you argue that point for at least a minute or two. Now, let's talk about the NRA. The NRA, in my opinion, is an organization that is probably in some ways criminal. Okay? That's what I'm going to say, criminal. Because it doesn't stand for anything but shooting and killing. when you think about it, you know. Whether or not it's bears, rabbits, and deer, or other animals that people go out and hunt, or whether it's other people, okay? The NRA is probably got more blood on his hands than any organization in the whole world. And not only that, but now they're talking about arming, the only proposal that the NRA, that's the National Rifle Association, the only proposal that the only parts of a proposal that they agreed to was arming school teachers. And that is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard of. Ladies and gentlemen, I started teaching school in 1975, okay? And I cannot imagine if someone would have come to me and said, listen, sir, we'd like to give you an AK-47 just in case somebody comes in the room waving one at you and your children so you can throw your English literature textbook down and grab your AK-47 and start shooting to defend yourself and the children. That is the most ridiculous foolishness that I've ever heard of. Please, school teachers, those of us who have become school teachers are probably the least likely to want to deal with pistols, okay? Those of us who said, okay, I want to just go in the classroom with these children, I want to teach English literature, I want to teach geography, I want to teach social science, I'd like to teach biology. We are the least likely people that you could hand an automatic firing weapon to in the manner that Donald Trump is suggesting. This is the craziest idea, people, that I've ever heard of. And of course the teachers are not buying into it, and so it won't go anywhere. But the idea that someone would even ask that, I could see a proposal where you said, okay, let's put a security man, let's put an armed security man in every other classroom. Or let's put 3 armed security people on every floor, you know. Or let's put in metal detectors all over the place and whatnot. So if anybody comes near this place with some heavy iron, you know, that could possibly be an automatic firing weapon, then we can stop that person and make sure that they don't enter the building. Let's do a lot of things, but arming teachers, I can't think of any more ridiculous proposal I have ever heard of. So let's forget about that, folks. That is the most foolish and ridiculous stuff that I've ever heard of. And not only that, but then I think Trump came back and said, all right, said what we could do is we give him a little bonus, you know, for doing that. Can you imagine some woman, some teacher, and folks, for the most part, females make up, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a large percentage. It leans toward females. So I'm going to use a female as an example. So if you, let's say she's teaching English literature, and she has the textbook in this hand, and the students are trying to concentrate, and she's probably trying to concentrate too, because with that weapon there, you know, I mean, can you fully concentrate on that, or do you have to kind of have half of your mind on the security aspect of what they're asking you to do? And I'm smiling because it's so ridiculous. And suddenly somebody's walking down the hall and you think that they perhaps represent some threat to you. You throw the textbook down, you run in the closet or wherever this thing is kept. I cannot imagine that you would hang it on the wall around all the young children. And you grab that thing and you start shooting, and the next thing you know, you shot the wrong person. You shot the wrong person. Now the police shows up. They start shooting in there. They think you are probably some gunman who's trying to take everybody out, and you really are that teacher who Trump has encouraged to join this program. And the next thing you know, you're talking about something that could blow up, please. And the reason I'm only giving this as much thought as I'm giving it, because do you know that there are people who actually have been taking that proposal seriously? I mean, millions of them taking that, especially his so-called base, taking that proposal seriously. That shows you how far the American consciousness has dropped, okay, in order to even be thinking about buying into something like that. That is totally, and I don't think Trump would have proposed that if he didn't feel that he's got all these people going down this negative pathway and calling people, name calling people, and arguing with people like Kim Jong-un about how big my button is bigger than yours, and trying to stop this federal prosecution, trying to stop what is his name, Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor, from investigating this collusion with Russia that most people believe happened, you know. And so people are jumping on this wagon. Everybody believes this happened. The majority of the American people believes that it happened, you know. And I believe that it happened. I believe that there's a reason that Mr. Trump wants to stop this investigation. Because, I mean, he hasn't said anything about the Russians' collusion, and that's pretty much been proven that they had something to do with this last presidential election, and it was in favor of Trump. And so now what he wants to do is stop the whole investigation. If you want to know the truth, I think Mueller is getting close to the beans, and I think Trump knows that. And I think he's getting nervous, folks, you know, because he realizes that this man is serious. This man is smart. He's dedicated. This man is a real American. You want to talk about a real American, that man is a real American. That man is the kind of American that all of us can respect. And I'm talking about Robert Mueller, former Marines, and I served with Marines as a Navy man aboard my ship. They had a company aboard my ship. And a man who was he's a former FBI director. He's been a lawyer. He's done a lot of good things, you know. And everybody wanted him to take that job, but now since he's in there, a lot of the Republicans have been trying to get rid of him, especially that guy, Devin Nunes. He came up with this so-called, what was it called, memo. That's what he was calling it. It was ridiculous. In fact, it added to Trump's troubles, because it indicated clearly that what happened with this FISA, with these judges, in terms of the surveillance warrant that they issued in order to be able to spy on some of these people, that warrant was what had nothing to do with why they are dealing with Trump. See, they want to pretend like that warrant was the reason that they went after Trump. But they went after Trump based on some other stuff, and it's pretty clear now. So Nunes, and he's kind of faded away, because that was so stupid, and I know Trump was saying, wow, this idiot has hurt my chances, you know, because he didn't help at all, you know. And I don't know what happened with the Democrats' response to that thing. I wouldn't even worry about responding to it, because it's ridiculous I'd leave it alone. If I was a Democrat, I would not even dignify it by responding to it. Anyway, because it turned out to be nothing anyway. Now, let me just talk about one other thing. There's a guy named Rick Gates. And Rick Gates was the deputy chair of the Trump's campaign. If you remember, this man, Paul Manafort, was the chairman and Gates was his deputy. And so Manafort has been indicted and is actually under arrest. Now, this guy, Gates, is trying to stay out of jail because both of them have been in some funny things having to do with real estate and laundering of money. But Gates was actually left with the campaign long after this man Manafort had been fired from the campaign. So Gates knows a whole lot about what went on. And what's going to happen, it looks like what's going to happen, is he's going to spill the beans on Manafort. And therefore, this will all go get after Trump because he knows so much about it, until by him spilling the beans more on Manafort. And also it could be that Manafort, after Gates started to spill the beans, Manafort could come forth and start to spill beans because Manafort has been saying that he was innocent, he's not guilty. So Mueller is he's got them all bunched together in such a way where the heat is being turned up on all of them at the same time. And like I said, Mueller is what I consider to be a quintessent American. He's a type of American that all of us can appreciate, So these, and when it comes down to these people who are laundering money and cutting these deals and colluding with the Russians, all those people ought to be exiled. And if somebody could exile them, if I could snap my finger, I would say send them all out of the country. They are not Americans, people. You look at it like you want to. These people are not Americans. They are for themselves and for themselves only. Manafort, Gates, Trump, all these people, they're not Americans. Trump is not a true American. How could you call yourself a true American if you're colluding with the Russians? You can't do that. And he did that. And there's no question in my mind or anybody else's mind that he did that. And the heat is being turned up on him. And lastly, I'm done with that. I want you to kind of put that in your pipe and smoke it until we see you next week. But before we go, I want to talk to you a little bit about this is the last day for Black History, February 28th. The month of February is considered Black History Month. And it is Black History Month, I should say, and it's been like that for a long time. One of my favorite people is Nat Turner, okay? And there are a lot of schools that have been named after him around in this country. But they're black schools, of course. But I remember hearing about him when I was a young kid growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. And they had pictures of him. They had pictures on the wall of Harriet Tubman, of Booker T. Washington, of George Washington Carver. And all of these, great Americans were on the, when we walked down the hallway. I tell people nowadays, it's a little different nowadays, but back in those days, we learned history by just walking down the hall. We learned black history, and not just during February, but all through the year, because these people were prominent in our minds, and the teachers talked about them. The one thing I can say about Nat Turner is he was a preacher, folks. If maybe you don't know it, but he was a reverend. Now he did a rebellion and a lot of people lost their lives in it. But he only did it after he said a spirit came to him and caused him to do that. Now, the bottom line is sometimes people have to, when injustice is running rampant, you see, it requires sometimes a desperate measure in order to bring things back to where they ought to be. And I would say that's what Nat Turner did. And of course, when we talk about Harriet Tubman, we know what she did because that woman helped so many people to get out of bondage in this country and to go to places like Canada where they could live in dignity and respect as human beings ought to live. And this hasn't been that long ago. You got to remember that when we go back 150 years, my grandmother lived to be 101 years old, okay? And so it's not like we're talking about, 1,000 years ago. We're talking about recent history. And some of those things are still barking at our people. Some of the results of that bondage is still barking at our people. But lastly, and keep in mind that in those 150 years that have passed by, nearly 150 years, we have been steadily moving forward as a people. And for the most part, with very little assistance, because when we came out of bondage here in this country, there was nothing there except say, go, you're free and ready to go. And so we've come a long way, and I want everybody to be encouraged about that. In spite of all the odds against us, we've come a long way. Okay, we put a man in the White House, if you recall, only a few years back. Alrighty, we'll talk to you next week. Okay, take care.